Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of a retelling of The Lost Warriors. Today, we have a little something of a special. In that, in essence, not a huge amount happened today, but also a lot did. A lot of pain, mostly for me actually, not as much for them. Because of course, I thought, aha, I've got them. This is going to be rather dangerous. No. It was not dangerous when I thought it was going to be. We'll get to that. So, let me tell you all about today then. Because, you know, it's the way it is. Starting off then, a little recap, just to help remind those from last time. Last time, the party had gotten sight of the leader of the forces besieging the city. This leader was a knight clad in black, sort of the head of these crusading knights that had come across to join the Khanate forces. And when the party noticed him, they saw very clearly that he was indeed the leader of this force and very dangerous. As such, his elimination was not only needed, but required before they could even enter the city. And that brings us to today. Today, we spent a lengthy time coming up with a map. Now, hopefully, editing me won't forget to do this next part. Better not. And we'll put in a map that they drew up. Because yes, they went to do a little map. In session, I guess you could say this is kind of a drawing on the floor. However, out of game, it's them drawing on the Roll20 map. You'll also see their tokens. I may also put in a few pictures as we go along to represent them, or represent what they're fighting, just to give you a visual. That, and also to try and flex some editing muscles and actually put a bit more effort into this, so enjoy that as well. Now then, after a long time of planning, they decided, you know what, Fallen Assault, probably not the best idea, right? Probably not the go-to option. So, the plan instead was to circumvent the entire map. My map. My map I spent time on. You bastards. But hey, it's fine. I'm not mad. I'm not mad in the slightest. Not even a little bit. But it's fine. No, in all seriousness, it's fine, because if Fallen Assault would have been dangerous, and, well, you'll see later why, as reinforcements make things difficult later, to say the very least. So they're completely justified in doing this. So, what was their plan, you ask? Their plan was simple, but ludicrous. Absolutely fucking ludicrous. Now, you might ask me, how was it so ludicrous? Well, first of all, they were going to run at the walls on the sides. Yes, the sides. Not the entrance, the sides. Where there were no towers. They were going to run from the western point of the map and essentially charge at the walls. You might say, hang on, this sounds a bit suicidal. And any other circumstance, anyone without these skill sets, it might have been suicidal. However, the party did rush at the walls, full speed on horseback. In one case, a spectral speed, because Rin can summon phantom steeds. The other on a actual horse, which very quickly bolted the minute they went too close to those walls. But before it bolted, Asuran, who was upon said horse, leaped and would have missed the walls entirely had it not been the fact he's a monk, so Step of the Wind took effect. So he just simply jumped the walls. Because, you know, monk. Am I right? So, he jumped over. Rak, with the aid from Rin, managed to jump the walls as well. Despite his heavy armour, he leaped over the entire wall, rolled over, and was straight into the main chamber. I say chamber, it's a wooden fort this was. So it wasn't really a chamber per se, but more a courtyard. But, details. Rin has a climbing speed because he's a weird little gremlin creature that has a parasite that mutates his body to have various features, including a climbing speed, so he just sort of slushed up the whole wall, as his horse quite literally evaporated into water on impact with the wall. It's a spectral steed, it's fine. Or phantom steed even, it's fine. He'll come back. He was made of goop anyway. Like a lot of Ren's things. So, the minute they jumped over, their insane plan actually worked perfectly somehow. No, not even the fault at all, which, you know what, fair enough, they knew they could pull it off, and they pulled it off. You might ask, okay, well, what was the plan then? Well, thanks to an aerial scout, being Simon, Rin's little companion, basically his patron, but consciousness split off into another little creature, is it familiar? He was informed that, indeed, there was a, where everything was, and there was a summoning circle inside of the camp. And that was where they were going to strike. This camp was pretty heavily guarded, though, hence circumventing the primary defenders and jumping straight into the main area. Now, of course, over a bit of time, reinforcements did start to pour in. But before that, the plan was to move a battering ram that was half built in the way to try and block them off for a while. It didn't end up being needed in the end, but it was still a good plan because it would have stopped reinforcements that couldn't circumvent the walls or teleport or do anything like that. The walls were only 20 foot, so climbing would have been possible, but it would have taken longer, and the party could have got out there pretty quickly. Now then, you might say, okay, well, they've got the main chamber, what now? Well, the main area, of course, had the head of the Crusading Force, a summoning circle, and a pair of red mages. Now, these weren't like Final Fantasy red mages, these were just mages in red. They weren't going to pull out a rapier and just dart towards them. As funny as that would have been, actually. But, and something, who knows, maybe I'll use one day, but essentially, these two were intended to be support mages with a bit of offensive power. Some of the most dangerous stuff they could pull out were level 4 spells, but they had greater invisibility, they had haste, they had fly, they had things like lightning bolt, as I don't like using fireball on my NPCs, because fireball is so strong, it's insane. I really have to say, for a 3rd level spell, I honestly think it should be a 4th level spell. I don't think it should be 3rd. I know it might sound a bit sad for some people, but fireball's way too strong for its level. I'll always say this, they made that thing so powerful. Yeah, it's like a signature spell, okay. But at 3rd level, you're absolutely clapping cheeks in ways that no one else can. So I didn't bother giving them Fireball. Because it's not fun to be a player when someone has an enemy has Fireball. Lightning Bolt, however, I don't feel bad about using. And when 2 of them lined up perfectly, well, what was I to do but hit them with a Lightning Bolt? It takes a bit more skill to aim that thing. I still think it should do more damage, frankly, because of just how difficult it is to aim, or just, move Fireball up. Anyway, enough of me ranting about Fireball. We can have that rant another day, probably. And that rant we certainly will have, because Christ, Fireball. So, anyway, moving on quickly. The mages acted pretty quickly the minute the party entered the room. However, it didn't really matter too much. The first mage empowered the Lord with haste. However, Rin also stole the spell. Now, the spell still went off, but it meant that this mage couldn't use it again until Rin used it, or went unconscious, or died. The other thing it meant is, essentially, Rin could now cast the spell. The mage did still get it off and empowered the Lord with it. However, it wouldn't matter, and you'll see why very shortly. The other one took flight immediately, preparing to be more maneuverable and have access to far more interesting options. Now, as far as the first mage, the minute Asran got his turn, it didn't matter. He simply lit the guy up. In fact, I believe Rin might have already hit him a bit prior, so Asran just finished him off. The Lord, of course, was stunned with the feedback. Well, not stunned, it's not the right word, but he misses his turn. Stun's very specific, and, well, we'll get to stunning, because of course he's a monk. You know exactly what happens, because the designers made this way too powerful. I will never understand which genius thought it was a good idea to allow you to continuously try to stun somebody for very little effort. Oh, just hit them. That's it. That's all it takes. Whose fucking idea was that? I'm looking at you, whoever it was. Why? Why did you cause me such pain? And so many other DMs, holy shit. No wonder you changed it in the next bloody version. Moving on though. First mage was, like I say, executed, to be very frank. Gunfire just riddling the poor bastard. Second mage lasted a bit longer, and got to do a little bit more. He dropped down, and Rack essentially had moved in a position to move the battering ram. However, not too quickly, because him and Asaran were in a line. Perfect. So one mage dropped down, hit them both with a lightning bolt. Rack managed to weather the worst of it, locking down to the ground and essentially taking the hit, grounding himself though. Asaran, however, well, unfortunately, man's covered in jewellery and also metal in his guns, so it was just bouncing all over him. Now then, what was my next? Because I am scatterbrain. Yes. So, whilst the Lord was unable to do anything, his ritual, however, was still active. Because yes, the entire time he was summoning something. Now, a little addendum here. This creature being summoned is a Dione. It is a much bigger, more powerful Oni. They are demonic in nature, and they are huge creatures. They're kind of like the giants of this part of the world, but they are pretty evil creatures who bring about demonic invasions and have a long storied history in Beijing of essentially being monsters that ravage the land, tear through it, drag people off to be sacrificed to bring more demonic creatures out, and more of their kindred out. It's very hard to bring one of those out without having to deal with them. But the more powerful, larger Dione are very hard to pull out, very rare, and very temperamental. This one had a deal with this particular lord, so hence how that happened, but the party's already aware they only intervened with the murder of their lord, in that they supplied the dragon-slaying bolts. Because yes, the Oni and the dragons over here had war for a long time. Both have developed means of dealing with the other. And, well, this particular Oni was a lower class one, but still halved Rin's health in about a hit, swinging his gigantic glaive at him. This was the most impact this one Oni had, though. I'll be very frank. It didn't get much more impactful than this. In fact, I'll be very honest. This Oni maybe lasted a round. You're never going to guess why. Stunning Strike, and that's not going to be the first time I'm going to be annoyed about it today. So, let me tell you about Stunning Strike, folks. When you, as a monk, hit someone, you can spend a key to attempt to stun them. And you can do this every single melee hit. I believe it has to be unarmed, but you're a monk, so it doesn't really matter. So, of course, he gets it off, doesn't he? Yep. And then proceeds to wail on this guy with his guns and sharpshooter, and dismantles him. It's terrifying. The amount of damage he did. He did something like... Well, they only had 110 health. He did something... I want to say... most of it. Was it about 99 damage or something silly like that? What, 97 damage? Something like that. And then the following round, before the Oni even got a chance, as the hobgoblins are pouring in, yeah, he just gatted him as well. Oh, and Rin did manage to empower Asaran with a haste, which just cemented it. He got even more hits off, even more gunshots off. It was terrifying. You might think, oh, did they have an epic fight with the Lord? No. No, they didn't. No, they fucking didn't. Guess why? Stunning Strike. And why I think I will honestly be putting stun resistance into things from now on, because holy fuck. Was that under fucking... I was just like... I couldn't be annoyed, because like, it's a mechanic, of course you're going to use it, but fuck me. I didn't realise it was that bad. He didn't realise it was that bad. Because he hadn't really played a monk before, or at least not recently, so we didn't realise how absolutely fucking ludicrous Stunning Strike was, until I've now experienced it. I can now be part of that wonderful cadre of DMs who can say, fuck Stunning Strike, fuck that ability, and fuck whoever decided that was a good idea. Anyway, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm a bit mad. It's fine. Listen, it's an ability. Player's going to use it. I'm mad at the player. I am mad at the designer, though. I am mad at the designer. I'm looking at you, the original 5e writers. Why did you think that was a good idea? You didn't play your game when you designed your game. I'm convinced of this. You don't play your game. If you did, you'd actually know how it worked. I'm convinced maybe Jeremy Crawford plays the game, because he at least gives good advice of like how things work. I don't believe most of you do play your game, because you would understand how it worked, then wouldn't you? Anyway, rant over about... I will have the rant one day about my thoughts on the design of 5e, and how I think a lot of it needs, well, a re-looking at. But they are doing a new edition, so I guess that's going to happen anyway. Now, moving on very swiftly before I rant on more and like a deranged lunatic. But he managed to... yeah, so... Knight, as I say, was dealt with very rapidly. Stunned, and then blown to bits. Stunned... And here's the part where it got ridiculous. There was a bit where he failed to stun him once, okay? He then retried it again. He has a belt, by the way, it gives him more ki. He's a dragon... He's like the Dragonhide belt, gives him more ki. So that's how he's able to pull this off. But he stuns him again. After about 3 more attempts. And then he ends up finishing off the Lord. Just after that. The hobgoblins that would have been reinforcing him have already ran off scared. But the entire time they were being watched and sort of mocked by another Yataga. Now, editing me, put up a little picture of this crow little guy, because he's a funny little fella. This particular creature mostly just mocked them and laughed at them. He did get hit and eventually left, but he mostly just laughed, because, well, I like to make some of my creatures comically evil, and the Yataga are comically evil. This one in particular, called Rael, who I think will be a recurring character, because I enjoy voicing him. I sort of give the, what was the voice I gave him? I see you having a bit of fun over there. Perhaps I should ruin your day for you. Something like that, I think it was. I quite enjoy voicing him. I also quite enjoy just off-the-cuff antics and taking the piss out of them through him. It's kind of funny. And they enjoy him as well, actually. They actually said they quite liked him, so he'll come back every now and then. I believe Asaran promised him a game of Mahjong at some point, so that will happen. Don't worry, I'm not intending to actually learn the game, because holy fuck, I know it's complicated. But he does give a little side note about how the demon the Lord had bound, because yes, the Lord had a bound demon in his cape. His cape was going to be a ranged attack that had advantage if you were next to a demonic creature, or a fiend. Never came up, of course, but Rael mentioned that the demon in that cape lost a game of Mahjong, Specifically, because Riel taught him wrong, deliberately, so he'd lose. Because he's a little shit like that. And I adore him for it. Now, here's where things got a bit hectic, because 2 more knights did walk in with an undead. Because yes, they had an undead in the camp. Quite a few were raised. I think, if I remember rightly, it was like 6. I think they've killed 3 now. Whether more undead have been raised, who's to say? But I believe there's 3 more at least knocking around, assuming no more tomb has been raided, which they don't know. But I want to keep those undead limited. I kind of like the idea that their death's important. Actually, no, they didn't kill the one. Actually, no, this one was killed. So yeah, no. But I kind of like the idea their death's important, because their death indicates a redeeming of the spirit of the warrior who's been sort of forced awake in this undeaf, horrifying state, where they've gone mad. So I like to make their death significant, because it's a hero who's been forced to serve an evil master. So, now then, those Rak and Asaran were drained of resources. Rak was already drained, because this was literally right after his other fight where he got downed. I do feel very sorry for Rak, because any other circumstance a paladin should be withstanding blow after blow, but he's got the same health as the monk, because he's naturally paladin. You tend to want to invest a bit more in other resources, and you can't end up suffering for it quite often. Not always, but quite often. So he's got less health. He's got less health than the average paladin might have. I say that. I probably wouldn't have built mine too much different, to be totally honest with you. Asaran, though, was also drained, so he got downed. Ren sort of managed to run away for a bit. However, I hadn't forgotten about the 12 warriors that came with Ren, and decided this was a good opportunity. One, because from a DM perspective, I kind of felt like, okay, nah, I didn't want to kill him. Not this early. I probably should let myself go ahead and actually kill the party at some point if they end up making a mistake, but I want it to be because they made a mistake, not because I overtuned something. I felt like that encounter was a bit overtuned, so I think someone told me it was like a CR20 encounter practically, that whole area would have been. Which, yeah, it's one of those. Sometimes I overdo it a little. Even now, it happens. So I didn't want to kill him, and I had an easy way out that was narrative and worked. Not all those 12 warriors survived, at least 4 of them were slaughtered, because, well, the undead's more powerful than them, and the 2 other knights were equal to them, so... But 12v3, so you do the math, right? It was a pretty easy sweep. The party were returned over to Buhan. Rak was not pleased, but he decided to press on, despite the fact he saw the event as a bit of a failure, because the way he sees it, he was dropped again. This is in character, by the way. The player, as far as I'm aware, is okay with the whole thing so far, but I do want to look at maybe giving him some survivability, because sadly his AC's like not that high for him being a frontline fighter, due to him being a great weapon wielder, and he's not got all the things Asaran can do. So maybe giving him a little helping hand wouldn't hurt, just to help bring him up to scratch, because Asaran's build is ludicrous. I didn't realise how powerful the gun monk could be. You could probably do this, by the way, with crossbows, if you're a crossbow expert and sharpshooter, so you don't have to have guns for this, but it's insane. Kensei as well, so yeah. I do want to play a monk at some point. Could be interesting. Now then. They went to a little potion shop after their waking up, because they haven't got much healing, so a bunch of health potions from Miguel's. Miguel's is a shop from a previous campaign of mine, where all the owners are called Miguel, even if they're a woman, and they are all part of an order of blood hunters, who are the mutation subclass think Witcher potions, basically. And you've got a pretty good idea of what these guys do. Asran did inquire about Miguel's various scars that looked self-inflicted upon his body, his wrist in particular, but then eventually was made to realise, oh, you're a blood hunter, that's why you're covered in marks. He felt very awkward after that one. But I like that a nice little in-character thing of, oh, because Asran is quite old. He's a half-elf, so he's been around the block a bit, so he did figure it out. After that, they boarded the Cursed Whisker, crewed by a bunch of tabaxi. Because yes, the barrens, where they're going, are filled with tabaxi, because it's the one place in the world people tend to leave them alone. And no one wants it anyway, so it's all theirs. Once they crossed the sea, narrowly missing the port authorities, they managed to find the barons. The Cursed Whisker dropped them off, and they were told to head west, to Bone Town. And we ended the session right as they saw Bone Town, and saw the husk. The husk of what? Well, just the beast. Nothing big. I will get into that next time, don't worry. Now, that is our retelling for this week. I do hope you enjoyed, and hopefully you'll get to see some of the antics, or the antics next week, but also you can probably see my suffering when it comes to Stunning Strike. It's a unique problem, but it's what I intend to look at and figure out. But at the end of the day, I have to just think about how I want to handle that in a good way. So, I will think on that one. I do hope this was enjoyable for you, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. I have been Baron Zarko-Brel, and I will see you all next time. Till then, ta-ta for now.